What's up, everybody? This is AJ Forbes, and I'm with my co-host Noah Ambule. Today, we got a special guest, Lucas Semb. Lucas, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing good.
So, right into it. Uh, we know, for anyone who doesn't know, Lucas was recently a beat writer for the Missoulian, correct?
Yep.
And he's developed quite a following over the course of these last few months, especially among UM sports fans, and he's done great work, and we're lucky to have him on. So how did you get into the sports media industry?
Yeah, so I was just an athlete growing up, like a lot of young kids. It's, basketball, football, baseball, wrestling, like whatever it was, I was doing it. And I knew one day if I wasn't going to play in the league, then I wanted to do the next best thing, which, was either coaching or just, still traveling, still being in the locker room, interacting with the guys. And it was just an easy transition for me. I always enjoyed writing and I guess being in the spotlight, if you will. So, it was just, a fun thing to do and, have people follow you. And it was just a cool, easy transition for me. So it's something I always wanted to do. And that's how I got into it.
So when you started out, how difficult did you find it to establish credibility as a beat writer, as a reporter?
Yeah. I think too, I hold myself to pretty high standards. So when out of college, I applied probably 100 different jobs. I was ready to go literally wherever. And I ended up ironically getting a job back home in Milwaukee as my first one. And it was a startup. And so I didn't have a whole lot of pressure, but I wanted to do a good job. And so in our first year there, it was called BBM Sports. We hit 1 million views within the first year and things were going really well. And they're still kicking it. I mean, they have huge ESPN faces on their shows now all the time, and they've really grown. But I knew I wanted to have a D1 beat like what I was doing. So, my next step was to go somewhere else. And I moved to Pensacola, Florida, and that was to work at like a daily newspaper because a lot of people want to see that you have that ability to work on deadline every single day doing it before you get a D1 job. So that was kind of the next move for me. And that's where I found it harder to build credibility. You're moving into a new community. It's an area of the country I've obviously never lived in. All new people who have been consuming the news the same way at the same place for their whole lives, sometimes living there. And so you're trying to break into a community and you want the people to trust you and to enjoy what you're doing and be welcome to your ideas. So I don't think it's necessarily hard. I've had success doing it. I mean, I had success here doing it. I had success in Pensacola doing it. It's just, I think, more pressure that you put on yourself in this career because, like we'll talk about, it's hard to be in sometimes. Like only the best of the best sometimes last, and so wanting to have the best for yourself and hold yourself to a high standards really what makes it difficult. But if you just do a good job and trust in yourself and know you're there for a reason, people are receptive to it.
Yeah, and like I've been following you very closely because that's kind of how I stay attached to the team with these guys after being on the team. And you've done a great job for Grit Sports all over, and it's been fun
Thank
to
you.
follow you. And it seems like you make a big effort to be pretty genuine in the content you produce and like how you um persuade like permit oh gosh, can't speak today, how you show these athletes in a light and like your content's really enjoyed by people. So what is it to you that, or like how do you make it so important to you to like make it genuine for your audience to enjoy the content as well?
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to really think about that, since being let go last Tuesday. But I think for me, the main thing was that I had such a big presence on social media, and applying for new jobs, people are like, "Well, like, what about new media? So, like, how do you use it so effectively?" And I'm just like, I don't know. I grew up on it. Like, it's just natural for me. I write a story, I want people to read it, I'm going to post it on Twitter. But like, that's like advanced for, I guess, some of the older folks that are still working in media. Um, but yeah, I think being on there a lot of times growing up too, like I'm a huge Milwaukee Bucks fan, and so I'd follow a lot of the guys who were covering the Bucks, and I'd tweet at them asking if so and so was playing tonight, or how the injury ended up, what someone's injury ended up looking like, and things like that. And I would just never hear back from them. And I told myself I never wanted to be like that, because they, just like me, are just another person. Like, if I'm going to be on Twitter, it's because I'm engaging with the people who are reading my work and essentially getting me paid. They're subscribing to the paper or doing whatever. So I think it's important too, to when you're, people who want to know about their team, to hear from someone in my shoes. Well, they're going to appreciate that. They're going to want to keep talking. They're going to want to keep following me because they feel like they're actually cared about. And so I thought it was really important to respond as to many people as I could. And sometimes it was even arguments, and I'm sure you guys have seen some of that. Like, but it was all in good fun. And part of it, MSU UM rivalry, like, to even have a hand in that, it was just cool. It was all something that I really embraced, and I think that led to a lot of success, and it was important for me.
So looking at kind of the opposite end of that spectrum, what do you think about the current state of journalism today? When you look at, you go on to ESPN and you see takes, especially like First Take, sometimes those guys do a lot of great work, but it feels like a lot of it is hot take journalism. A lot of it is take of the day. And it seems like they're not very consistent with what they say on a weekly basis, daily basis, even sometimes. So do you feel the same way? Do you feel like a lot of the mainstream media in sports today is more hot take journalism?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's kind of a tough spot, because people over the years are just losing like the ability to sit down and actually read something, or sit down for a long time and watch something. So like, if you want to grab someone's attention, you got to say something crazy. And that's where you see like Stephen A. and Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp just saying whatever. And then you see Twitter headlines about it everywhere. But that's what drives people to their show. And then they put something like that on Twitter, and everyone bashes Skip Bayless, but everyone's feeding into exactly what he's trying to accomplish by spreading his name and whatever he's saying. And then people want to tune in the next morning, hear him try to back himself up.
Yep.
That's just kind of the way it's gone. And I don't think it's right. I tried not to do that. I was always just, like, people grow up and they're like, oh, I want to be like Skip Bayless. I mean, I don't know who says that, but, or I want to be like Stephen A. Smith or something like that. But like, people have told me, just be yourself. Have other people say, oh, I want to be like Luca Semb. So like, I've never done anything but be myself. And that for me, like, sometimes you just naturally have hot takes, but you can't go around hunting them just to say whatever. Like, you just got to be honest.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Sorry, no. Do you think social media has kind of tied into that hot take journalism deal?
Yeah, it's so easy to just, even spur of the moment, if you're feeling crazy in a certain moment, you can grab your phone out and have something out on the internet in half a second. It's like, I like social media as much as the next guy, but it's also kind of ruined the industry in a way, because everyone's just trying to get clicks and likes and publicity. And back in the day, like, working at a paper was a luxurious job. You were getting paid. You were traveling to every game, because the only way people could find things out was by seeing what a reporter had to say or reading the paper the next morning. And I mean, eventually that was going to go. We just live in a world that's progressing, but yeah, there's benefits and cons to it, but it's definitely played into it.
Yeah, and we have, like, obviously the NBA playoffs are kind of going right now, and like you said about Skip Bayless kind of drawing people to his show by having some crazy hot take and get out and then come back in. I was watching the game 1 of Lakers Grizzlies, and AD gets hurt in the first half or towards the end of the first half, and Stephen A just goes on and it's like, LA, the city's gonna be done with him. Like, not even worried about his injury, just like if they're like he can't play, like he's just done, and like all this stuff. And Stephen A is going on and not really like giving any attention to like what the extent of the injury could be. Do you like, I find that in like interesting in that kind of scenario when it's like it's kind of getting away from analyzing the game they're covering and like how that works in that situation.
Right. I feel like for certain people, trying to think how I want to say this. Like if you're Stephen A, he makes his money off just being a loudmouth and like being crazy like that. And people love those kind of reactions. I do for the most part think Stephen A actually does a good job bringing things full circle in the end. I think that he can be funny and he tries to, have moments where he's becoming a meme, but in the end, he always has something useful to say. Um, it's guys who like aren't as well known who are trying to do that kind of stuff to make a name for themselves where it becomes a problem for me. Or like even guys who already have a name. Like I was watching the Bucks versus Heat the other day, and Reggie Miller said that Tyler Hero being out for the Bucks was a bigger loss than the Bucks not having Giannis. Like, if
Insane.
you played basketball, you know basketball. If you really think that,
Yeah, that's
no,
absolutely
you
insane.
you
Insane.
don't you don't really think that. You don't. And if you do, you had no business being in a league, like because you know how important. Like any MVP on any team is always going to be more important. It's just stuff like that that sometimes gets on my nerves, but that's for the moment when you have that media and you can do something without really thinking about it fully, like in the paper. That's why people have asked me, do you want to do TV? And I'm like, no, not really, because I mean, sometimes when you're putting together a sports cast or like the night section or something, you write through that stuff and then it goes on the teleprompter or whatever. But if you have to do like a live cut from somewhere, you're just coming up with things on the top of your head. And I like to be able to sit down, sift through my notes, my details, what I saw, what I heard, and really be able to tell a story and put it together and actually think about it without saying something off the cuff.
So what do you think ultimately, what do you think the best way to combat these hot takes is for the industry? How do we take this industry into what it is and make it better?
That's tough.
I know I'm putting you on the spot, but
No, that's good. I think there's a lot more problems than just like the hot takes. So it starts at a corporate level, and you might have questions about this later, but there are people who still value good journalism and good reporting. You just have to find the right people in the right situation. And Lee Enterprises was not that, apparently. Um, but like there are people who care, but big corporations like Gannett or Lee are going to start ruining, like they're ruining lives, they're ruining the industry because they're cutting jobs and they're so short-sighted. They see, oh, we need to save $40,000. Well, then they just cut the cheapest person that they, like for me, I don't know if I didn't sign an NDA, but like for me, I'm thinking, so they got rid of me. I'd only been there for 6 months. They moved me across the country, cost me a ton of money. Yes, they helped with it, but I still had to pay a large amount. If they had to pay me a month severance, had they cut the guy above me, they would have paid him 10 weeks. Had they cut the guy above him, it would have been 20 weeks. So like I was the cheap option for them. It was people in an office, in a corporate office, making decisions in Iowa at the main headquarters who they don't know anything about Missoula. They don't know about the following that I had or the work I'd been doing. They didn't read a thing. It was all just money for them. And when you work in an industry like journalism where you're trying to, uncover the truth and, it's important to democracy. Like journalism is important, not just sports. It's very important institution. And when you work in something like that as like a business leader, I think you need to be more understanding of that than just the financials. I think that's where things have gone downhill. Now more people are going independent, but then more people going independent leads to like crazy people like we're talking about now, just trying to make hot takes and make a name for themselves, because
Mhm.
going independent takes a lot of time and work and effort to try to get yourself off the ground. I mean, years and years, because so many people are trying to do it. So if you want to try skipping a few steps, you say something crazy and make a huge headline. Um, so it's tough. I don't know that I really have an answer to how we fix it, but I think we just need more people who genuinely just want to do a good job. And I think there's a lot of people who are like that. That's not to say there's not, but there's a lot of people in big spots that either don't care about journalism or are just trying to build their image. And that's a big conversation. But
Yeah. I
I,
mean,
I
I
hope you
think,
guys get, yeah, I hope you guys get what I'm trying to go, where I'm trying to
oh,
go there.
absolutely.
I can't think of a good way to conclude it, but
I mean, ultimately, I think, I mean, whether it's sports or anything else, I believe if you have good people, making hard decisions, then ultimately things will work out in the end. And um, apparently, a lot of us in this little chat room right here have experienced situations where the people in charge haven't been the best of people, and a lot of us get caught in the crossfire. It happened with me when I was at the University of Nebraska, and you've been talking about your experience, and I know Noah's experienced some of that as well. And I just think if when you have good people making hard decisions, that's probably the best situation that we have.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I just think like these people, yeah, I just feel like I'm a broken record, but when you're making decisions about who to cut and not to cut, you need to actually dig into those communities and
Absolutely.
see what people value. Because, and I was humbled by the responses, but I don't know if you guys saw the hundreds of responses people gave me, and people
Oh, yeah.
saying I don't need to get the paper anymore because if there's not going to be work like his, which was just, that was rewarding enough in itself to hear people say something like that. And it makes me, I'm content. I know what I offer and what I bring, and all I can say is that if you do a good day's work and you're just persistent, like I applied for 100 different jobs out of college, had to keep going every single day until I got one. And then when you get into these places, and we talked about trying to break into their community, you just have to keep pumping out good work until someone sees it, till the right person sees it, and then it starts to spread like wildfire. Eventually, you have a name for yourself. Like, as long as you're doing a good day's work and you care about what you're doing, and you're confident in yourself, you'll land somewhere. That's why I'm not too stressed about it. I loved covering the Grizz. I love Coach Hauk. I loved working with you guys. Like, it was, I love traveling for the games. Like, it was awesome. Um, I'm sad about not being able to do that, but I know that something good will come along. I just think that people who make those decisions in the future need to actually dig into these communities and see who and what the people care about before they make cuts, because you might think you're saving money right now by cutting someone like me, but in the long term, is it going to benefit you? So that's
Yeah.
something that I think needs to be considered more.
Yeah, definitely. And the response you got on Twitter, at least that I saw, was very well deserved. I mean, you've done, like we've talked about, you've done a great job covering the Grizz and including the whole like Grizz community in your work, and it's been awesome to see.
Thank you.
Um, do you, and I think you've done a great job of this. Like I think I said that earlier, but like, do you think as a whole that athletes get represented pretty fairly, like through the media, or do you think they kind of get the short end of the stick sometimes, or what are your thoughts on that right now?
Um, I think in Missoula specifically, and you guys might disagree being from the other side of it, but I think in Missoula specifically that they're put in a pretty good light. Like the guys that I work with, like Kyle Hansen and Sean Rainey and my partner Frank, like these guys all, everyone's prideful of living in this state and being from this area and having these homegrown kids, and like, or guys who play for the Grizz because they're such a loyal, or like such a team that has so much loyalty to in this area from fans. Like, I think the guys here are put in a good light, and that's all we want to do is share their stories. Like during the football season, I would write a senior feature every Friday, and it would just be about in preparation for Saturday's game, about one of the guys who paid his dues and spent time in Missoula, and like we want to show those good stories. We're not trying to, and that's a lot of the time, people ever since Donald Trump stuff, like it blew up into, when he said fake news, and now everyone turns it like that's not generally the case with sports. I see how maybe people could say that um, when you're talking about like a New York Times or a Washington Post, like huge publications, but when you're talking about the Missoulian, it's just local good reporters who are trying to do good. They're not trying to tarnish someone's name or like do anything crazy like that. So yeah, I think here they do, but it depends on where you're talking about. But I think more than ever, there's been lately just a push to be more inclusive, I guess, in media with all kinds of things. Women's basketball blowing up recently, and I love that. It's been a great product. I would, yeah. So I guess to answer your question, I'd say generally, yeah, talking through it out loud. I think so.
How do you feel like when you're scrolling on your phone? How do you feel when you see something like that, where you see a beat writer calling for a job, or you see, asking for, seeing potentially, changing, asking for a guy to change a position or a depth change, or how do you react when you see stuff like that?
Well, when you're in a role like that, you can't do stuff like that. Like when you're actively covering a team, you're supposed to be. So people said that I was not a reporter because I said we when I was talking about the Grizz. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. And when I said that, I'm just referring to, the community, the Grizz community that I'm doing my work for, the people who, again, are subscribing to the paper and getting me paid and coming to my Twitter feed. Like, those are important people to me. And that's why I said we. I didn't mean it like me and Coach Help devising a game plan this weekend. Like, it wasn't like that. But I guess technically, in a traditional sense, you're not really supposed to do that. But especially like you would never have seen me on Twitter saying, "Oh, I think Lucas Johnson needs to see the bench this week, and Chris needs to get a shot at it." Like asking for a depth change, or as a reporter saying, "Coach Houck needs to go." Like that is not okay. You can't. You can have your opinions, but you can't be posting that stuff on Twitter. Um, you can't be writing about it. This is not in your um, job description.
Mhm.
And then when you're doing that, you're just showing that you have a bias, and then people aren't going to take your work as seriously as they should. And people who are doing that, I think the vast majority aren't like that, but people who do that, it's too bad, and they kind of need a reality check on how to do the job.
Yeah.
On the same side, of that, sometimes I think that there are players or coaches who do something um, that needs to be reported about. Like if you make bad decisions, you're going to have to live with seeing that in the news. It's not because we're out to get you. It's not because we're trying to make you look bad. It's just our job. Like when you play for the Grizz and say you get arrested, you are like a big figure in the community. People want to know what's going on with you. You're going to end up in the paper or on the news or something like that. And I know there's been times where it's happened in Missoula, and then people have been, irritated. Why are we seeing our players in a light like this? And probably players wondering, oh, come on, why'd you have to out me like that? But sometimes that's just part of the job. If you're going out of your way to make people look bad, where it starts to, cross the line of actually delivering news or having like delivering your own agenda, that's the issue.
Yeah. And just from my own experiences, we are, throughout my playing career, we are definitely made aware of the fact that we are figures in the public eye,
Right.
and we have to think about stuff like that when we're trying to make decisions, especially when it's out in public, or we all know if someone gets arrested, it's going to be reported on, or if we make a mistake that's not football related, it's going to be talked about. And so I think it's important for, especially for, this is me sounding like the 60 year senior that I am, is like guys coming in to college football for the first time, like they have to understand that you're gonna be kind of put on a pedestal, and everything good that you do is going to be amplified, and everything bad you do is going to be amplified as well. So I think that's just me talking to the younger generation of players coming in, and I think it's important to talk about.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times the media has a bad rep because of people who have done their job bad, like you're talking about, like putting a player in a bad spotlight. And that kind of spreads. People think, well, is my local reporter going to do that? And most of the time they're not trying to. Like sometimes people think we're just waiting in the weeds, hoping one of you guys screws up or something. It's not like that. We want the best for all of you guys. We work with you guys on a weekly basis. We're at practice, we're at the games, we're at interviews. Like generally it's, you want to be objective, but it's hard not to want to cheer on the guys who you are doing this work about.
Mm. Yeah. And so just to quickly wrap everything up, um, we've talked about social media, we've talked about the paper and stuff like that. At Barnburner Sports, we've made an effort to try to be kind of multimedia, whether it be online videos, podcasts, stuff like that. So what do you think? What do you think sports media is moving to in terms of where fans and reporters and sports journalists are able to consume sports, whether it's streaming, social media, etc.?
Yeah, I definitely think social media is just going to keep being a tool that grows. Um, but I think it's kind of trending more, and I've had this conversation with some people in the industry, but it's trending more towards people going independent, like you guys trying to do your own thing. Like,
Mhm.
so I worked for Lee Enterprises, and they do advertising, and they bring in ads from, Bob Ward's or Shields or whatever. And every story I write, they stick those ads on all my stuff every day. I don't see a dime. That all goes towards the company.
Mhm.
But if you go independent, now you're pumping out content. Any ad revenue you make, you're bringing that in. If you're getting ads on, say, this podcast, someone wanted to sponsor the podcast, you're getting money off of that. You want to stick a little ad on an online story, you're getting money off of that. Someone asks you to post a sponsored ad on Twitter, you're getting money off of that. So not only are you profiting from, you're bringing in a following, people are reading your stories, listening to your podcast, but then you can connect with the community if you're doing a good job and bring in ad money. And the way that companies have been cutting jobs, I think that's becoming more and more of a thing where you just have to be self-sustainable. And like I said earlier, if you just keep your head down and do a good job, that stuff takes, it's a long, slow process to be able to do that. But if you love it, it all pays off in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's I guess my like one of my like last few questions I guess would be like what's your plan like moving forward if they've ever even got to think about that yet, or what's next for you that we can expect on the Twitter page, be able to follow you again?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I hope it's something big. I've gotten about 4 job offers so far off that tweet alone. And I appreciate everyone offering those. I haven't taken any yet. I want to make sure that it's a priority for me to, I got to the top tier of the FCS level. I can't go beneath that at this point. It needs to be like a group of 5 or a power 5 or NDSU or SDSU or, like I can't go below where I am right now. So I'm just going to kind of take my time and wait to see what happens. We love it here, and that's part of why I was upset to lose the job. We don't want to leave. It's the mountains, the nature, the culture of the city, just the team. Like, there's nothing like waking up on a Saturday morning here and seeing everyone walking downtown along the river, going to the farmers market, like all in their Grizz gear, people tailgating. It's so cool, and knowing I won't be a part of that stinks, but we want to be here as long as we can to experience that kind of stuff. My goal would be to, enjoy the summer, see the parks and the lakes and everything, and then start applying in July and hopefully have a D1 gig um, by the start of the football season. And if not that, then maybe something by the winter for a basketball D1 job.
Sweet. So last question for you. How far do the Bucks go?
I think they're good. I'm
'Cause
gonna answer.
you're talking to a Celtics fan. So how far
Yeah,
do the Bucks go?
yeah. I think they're gonna win the finals. I think they're gonna win the
Oh.
finals. It's hard to say that after Sunday's game, but
Yeah.
that aside, I mean, the Bucks are just, you can never count them out. It took the Heat shooting 80% with no Giannis and the Bucks having a week off to get a win, which really came down to the fourth quarter. So that just really goes to show the Bucks are just, I feel like they're head and shoulders above everyone. The only thing is that the Celtics have the depth, but
Mhm.
I don't know if the whole of their roster can play to that potential for a 7-game series. I
Mm.
don't know if you're going to get the best out of everyone on the bench for 7 games.
Yeah.
Who do the Bucks play in the finals then?
I got the Clippers,
Clippers?
and I made a futures bet on that. It was plus 700. So yeah, I put or 7,000. I put $10 down, and it's going to pay 700 if it's a Bucks Clippers finals matchup.
Well,
So
Scott Foster's repping the Suns Clippers game
I
tonight,
know
so
it's
mark it
perfect.
down.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I will say I am a huge Russ fan, so I do enjoy him seeing his kind of a career resurgence with the Clippers.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you talk about players being put in a bad light, it's crazy. Like people are just coming for his name, and it makes me so mad because he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes.
First ballot Hall of Famer. I know people have recently been having the debate between him or CP3 for a better career. It's easily Russell Westbrook. And he's just such a good dude too. Like he's a good dad. He's a good
Yes.
husband. He's a good person in the community. And he handles it all with like so much grace, despite everyone trying to slander him.
Yeah. Oh, you just made my day. I love that. Not only were you a great guest, I love that whole thing right there. Well, man, I think that's the end of it. Um, yeah, it was great. That whole perspective of the other side of the coin. You know, we talk about players all the time, and it was great hearing from somebody on kind of on the other side of the table. So that we really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's cool to, I'm sure people will want to hear this too. Like they've heard about me getting fired, but they haven't really heard my story or my thoughts on it all. So I'm
For
sure
sure.
people will be interested to see.
For sure, man. Well, again, thank you so much, and thanks for everybody listening.